Welcome back to the Breaker Bros. And tonight we're going to review, or I guess react to the 2024 Bengals NFL Draft. So I guess...
are we grading or are we reacting? Are we going to
same difference.
React?
I get a little distracted when I can hear myself, sorry. So, but no, we'll grade. But I guess, what was your initial thoughts, like overall, after...
Okay, well, to be honest, I was really bummed that we didn't pick
the running back.
The running back from Tennessee.
Right, yeah.
Right. But then, okay, full transparency, I forgot that we signed, what's his face?
Moss?
Yeah, I forgot about the Zach Moss signing. So I was like, how are we going to just rely on... Oh, I can't remember anybody's names, man.
You're talking about Brown?
Chase Brown. Yeah,
Chase
how are we
Brown?
going to rely on just Chase Brown? But
Well,
we're not. We got Zach Moss and Chase Brown.
Plus Williams. They re-signed Williams again for one more year.
Yeah, but I mean, the Zach Moss takes the sting out of it, right? Like, to me, forgetting about Zach Moss is the reason why I was like, come on, you got to pick a back, right? So now what they actually did, I like, right? Now that I remembered that there was Zach Moss. And then they signed the guy from Oklahoma State who, like, put up huge numbers last year.
Oh, rookie free agent?
Yeah, undrafted free agent. And he's like a 4.55 guy, so he's not like elite speed, but he's like, you know, like a good back, you know. So that makes sense to me. You sign Zach Moss, you sign undrafted free agent, you got your guys coming back that have been around for a while. I mean, I feel like Chase Brown's got to be, of the guys that were with the team last year, Chase Brown has to be, to me, kind of the focal point. But then with the signing of Zach Moss, maybe Zach Moss is probably, you know, maybe 75% of what, you know, what's his face?
Mixon.
Joe Mixon, yeah. So if he does 75% Joe Mixon and then you increase Chase Brown, you're probably fine, right?
And I still think there's an off chance that we might get P. Ryan back, right? Because he could be potentially a cut candidate for Denver, because I feel like they weren't really
Denver
utilizing
cut him.
They already did?
Mm-hmm.
We
We played against him twice last year.
Yeah, but he was still on the team.
No, I think we literally played against P. Ryan twice. He was on Denver, got cut, and then somebody else at the end of the year picked him up, and we played him again.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember the team, but it still holds. He might get cut again. Who knows? But
well, I don't know. If he's on a second team, they might.
Well, I don't know how
more likely keep him.
Work.
Well, I think he had a reasonable contract to begin with. It was only like 3 or so a year, right? So, like, if you want to utilize your running back to be a blocker,
yeah,
then he probably would be a pretty good option. But yeah. I would like him as like our third running back for like third downs.
Josh, let's focus. What do you think about the Bengals draft?
Well,
what was
I
your
mean,
reaction initially, like looking back on it.
Well, I mean that kind of adds to it. I guess the initial thing I want to say about the draft, and I feel like nowadays it's becoming too much of a production. Because I felt like that first round, man, it was just dragging on.
Yeah, they have way too long for picks. That's 100% right.
Well, no, they were purposely waiting for commercials to run through because like it was obvious that they already had the pick in, and they were purposely delaying it so that way they can get all their commercials in. And just like the first 2 days, it kind of takes away from the fun. And I just miss just having those consecutive picks, like them actually picking when they pick, if that makes sense. Because like back in the day when they picked, they would pick it, and sometimes you would miss it because it'd be on commercial break. Like they would still have that little,
I see.
the ticker on the bottom. And like, because I used to remember all the time they would skip the Bengals, and like we would never see the picks live on certain picks. But I mean, I guess the benefit of that is now you actually see all the teams on
Yeah,
TV, but
I
it's
don't
way too long.
understand. I don't understand why they can't just do it like both ways, right? Like, just be better at putting the commercials in then.
Yeah, I mean, or do like more of like those still ads where it's just more or less like a picture in like the
Yeah,
corner
yeah,
of
but I
the.
mean, like, it's like ESPN. I don't know. It's hard to say because I love the draft, so it's hard for me to say that I don't want to see those guys talking because I used to live for those guys talking. But now
Well,
we talk, so now I'm like, I don't need them to talk. I used to like seeing the videos and stuff, but like now you can watch the videos on YouTube, right? So it's
yeah.
kind of like some of it is kind of antiquated, and I think they need to speed it up.
Hmm.
So I guess you were saying you don't like how they like
Well, it's just
don't
too much
just
of
do it
a
like a live
production.
event. They
Yeah,
kind of manipulate it, and I'm
because
saying that I think that they have too much dead time between picks.
yeah, well,
So
because it
that's
has to be a
different.
spectacle now. Like they have to have all the thrills and the backstories and
Yeah,
random like events or
that
ceremonies
just
throughout the
that's
draft.
that's like antiquated though, right? Like I feel like at least the way I watch things now, like I am more into like less polish and like more information, right?
Hmm.
And when you go to ESPN, it's almost weird watching stuff because it's so like production oriented and not information oriented, right? Like
Hmm.
where it's like you'd rather watch Pat McAfee just kind of talk, right? And like,
Hmm.
just kind of go with the flow, right? Like a real conversation with someone. And
Hmm.
then you turn on ESPN and it's like 3 minutes of this, change the screen. This, it's kind of like robotic, right?
Hmm.
It's not as organic, to use a multisyllable word.
But as far as the Bengals perspective,
Yes.
I thought what I realized throughout the draft was that kind of to your point, running back wasn't much of a need to them. It seemed like, or
For sure.
interior offensive line. So it feels like they're pretty satisfied with what they have in the works when it comes to outside of like specifically the guards. I thought because it was like in the third round when some of the guards were starting to go. I was like, oh, let's get. I want them to get Zach Zinner, and then he literally went like a pick or two after that. I was like, damn, like
Yeah.
because once I saw that random guard go before him, and I was like, oh well, hopefully the Bengals are thinking of, and then he literally got picked. So, but it
Mhm.
didn't seem like they were really that interested in guards, anyways. I
Yeah.
think they're okay with what they have, and we still have Kappa for another year, so it's not like, or for this year, I should say, and then they could draft a guard early next year. So
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting, and then of course they picked the two tight ends, which I wasn't really expecting. Um,
I
but I
mean, you
guess
say
it
that,
makes.
but how can you say that, right? I mean, we're kind of putting together our slide for our
Yeah, I think we had
mock
a few
drafts.
drafts
We
where we
picked
had
we
multiple.
picked multiple. We double dip tight end a lot in our mocks, so
That's true, but
not
I guess,
completely unexpected.
well, because at the time that we picked those tight ends, there was still
Yes,
other interior offensive linemen that I thought we could get.
yeah,
Like we eventually got a center, which I'm happy about, but there was other centers we could have got earlier in the draft, or there was like a few other guards we could have got earlier, but they decided to go with defensive back or tight ends.
yeah.
So, but I guess let's just start with the first round.
Okay,
Marius Mims.
okay,
What
yes.
grade would you give that round?
I don't know. Are we going ABC? We doing like numbers? We doing? I like it. I
I
don't
just
like it.
I just ABCs,
Okay. Well,
a letter grade.
I guess I gotta give it an A. Um, when it happened, I was super excited about, but now I'm like worried, right? I'm like paranoid because like, I guess Nick Saban talked a bunch of, was pretty negative on Amarius Mims, and then a lot of people have been talking about injuries and not playing a lot. So I'm worried, like uh, shades of Cedric Oblehi worried, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I still gotta give it an A because it's just he's just a big dude, and he's coming from Georgia, and it's just, like, it's just different than drafting like a spread tackle who's never actually had to block, right? So I like it. You talked me into it. What grade do you give it?
Yeah, no, I think an A is a solid grade. I think there was only really 2 linemen that seem appropriate for the 18th pick at the time, which was Mims and that Fitano. But I think Mims has a much higher ceiling, and then I was starting to get really I was pretty high on Fitano towards like around the draft, but then I kind of found out he was like, I think he's 24. So that's why I kind of put the edge to Mims. But overall, I mean, we really needed a tackle. So at the 18th pick, he was the last pretty much premier tackle that you could take high in the draft, or at least that early in the draft. So, and then it was about time that we kind of addressed the offensive line in the NFL draft in the first round. So, and I feel like Mims, if he had to start a lot right away, he's kind of in a situation where he can kind of get groomed into the position and kind of be the swing tackle, and or at least that's what I think they're going to do. Yeah. I know you think they might do guard, but I think they're going to keep him at tackle because they use the swing tackle a pretty good amount, and they'll have more reason to have 6 offensive linemen out there. I know he's a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker, but I feel like you can put him in a situation where, I mean, if he's next to Orlando Brown or Trent Brown, I mean, I don't know how they don't move people, you know what I mean, in the run game. But no, I think it's a solid A. I know there's some red flags as far as the inexperience and being injured, but I think he's in one of the better situations for his situation. So,
but the other thing that's a positive is the sheer volume of tackles picked in the draft.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So like, just from a value standpoint, it's just like, it was a good pick to make at the time, because it's not like they took him over other guys, right? By the time they got to him, it's hard to argue that there was a better tackle left, right? And then they picked him, and it wasn't like the teams were done drafting tackles. It just kept going.
Yeah, no, it was insane.
I mean, like, even in the third round, they were teams were drafting tackles from like small schools I'd never heard of.
Yeah, no, tackles. Quarterbacks.
Wasn't there like a Canadian guy drafted in the third round?
I think so. No, there was
like they drafted tackles from Canada. That's like insane. You talk about many. Like Power 5. It's just like, well, I don't know how the Canadians fit into that.
No, it's it was interesting to see how the draft played out, especially in the first couple of rounds, because the first round, or the first half of the first round, the 6 quarterbacks that went, and then all the receivers that went in the first round, and then all the tackles that went in the first and second and third, I think it really kind of skewed the rest of the draft and kind of what we experienced in the mocks. I don't think anyone expected that many offensive players in those positions to go that early. And I think that's probably what kind of helped them out later in the draft in other positions. But yeah, I guess going into the second round, Chris Jenkins, this is, it was weird because I know, at least from our perspective, we weren't necessarily really high on him.
Yeah, we weren't super high on him.
So, but it was weird. Like, I had a few days before the draft, I kind of had a weird feeling that we might go that way, because I was thinking there's always those players that we don't really think of that ends up getting picked on the Bengals or whatever. And I know other Bengals fans, they were actually pretty high in Chris Jenkins. So when he was picked, I was kind of, it was kind of lackluster because we were actually fairly close to getting Fisk. It felt like there was good potential that he was actually going to drop to us.
Yeah, but we liked other defensive tackles.
Yeah, especially
right. So what grade would you give the Jenkins pick?
Initially, like I said, not that it was a letdown. I think it was more, I don't know, maybe anticlimactic, just because it's like we didn't really look into him that much, or we weren't really high on him. But then as I learned more about him, his personality and what he, like, because he specializes in stopping the run. And once I found out, like, oh, okay, No wonder why we didn't like him, because you don't really see much of those highlights of like players just stopping the run, or they're not as sexy as like the defensive tackles or defensive linemen going after the quarterback and getting those sacks and stuff. So you don't get to see those type of highlights as much. But the fact that he specializes in the stopping the run, I think is really good. I think maybe he might have a lower ceiling than maybe some of the other defensive tackles that was in the draft, but I think it's a solid B.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna give it a C plus, only because I'm just being honest. That's my gut. I don't know anything. I mean, I watched a bunch of Michigan games, never really noticed them. We watched his highlight package. We weren't high on him. So I just feel like I got to be consistent. And the only reason it's the C plus is because I trust the scouting from the Bengals over my own judgment. But C plus, I'm probably wrong, but I hope I'm wrong. I'd be glad to be wrong, but C plus.
At the time that we took Jenkins, who else was available that you would have won it?
I think we liked the Ohio State guy better. We liked McKinley Jackson better. So those are two off the top of my head.
Yeah. Hall would have made sense. I think he also
better.
Well, I think the problem with Hall is very similar to Mims, where I didn't really realize this. We only saw his tape. We didn't really get to know his background, but apparently he has a lot of injury, like a big injury history too. So
I see that. But I mean, in terms of the player, though, like I remember seeing Hall play in Ohio State games. Like I remember him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch his highlights. Because we want to say film, but come on, we're just watching YouTube highlights.
Yeah, highlights.
If you watch his YouTube highlights, I liked Hall better, but I hope I'm wrong. I mean, PFF says he's strong. That's good, right? You want a strong defensive tackle.
Yeah, they call him the mutant, and another little bonus is that he really enjoys Skyline chili, which is nice because most people hate it. If you're not from Cincinnati.
But the other thing is that Michigan won the national championship, so maybe he was doing what he was told to do. Maybe his job wasn't to be splashy. Maybe his job was to occupy dudes, and that was best for the team. So you never know, right? So that's kind of the silver lining in it. This is what I'm telling myself after the fact, right? But when we were doing our review and our analysis, we had him lower than other dudes.
Yeah. No, like I said, I warmed up to the pick once I found out he's basically a run stop specialist, and that's exactly what we need. So I think it's going to work out.
Especially considering what the Steelers did in the draft, especially considering who the Browns are and who the Ravens are. Like getting a guy that's like a run stopper is probably really smart. So that's again another reason why I'm like, maybe I'm wrong, right? I hope I'm wrong. But in the Bengals' run defense last year was very suspect. So these are all things where it makes a ton of sense. Let's move on. Talking about run defense is not fun.
All right, third round, Jermaine Burton. This was kind of a shock. I mean, for whatever reason, because I remember we were looking up, like on ESPN, they had player rankings that seemed to be fairly accurate. It seemed like most people were getting picked around what ESPN had him ranked, and I didn't even see Jermaine Burton, so I thought he had been picked already. But then when he was picked, I was like, that's a really solid pick. I didn't think he would be there in the third round. He wasn't necessarily like in my top 5 favorite receivers, but I did like the way he played. I felt like he tracks the ball really well, and for him to be our third receiver, he's going to do really well based off of what we've seen or what it seems like. And then just perception wise, a lot of people that aren't necessarily Bengals fans are the ones that they seem to like this pick the most out of our draft. But it makes sense. It seemed like it was I guess somewhat of a steal. I know there were some red flags as far as character concerns, but in terms of what he can do in the Bengals offense, I think it's going to work out really well, especially because if he's going to take over Boyd's position on the depth chart and be the third receiver, I think the big advantage that he has is that he runs a 4-4, so he's going to be a little bit more explosive. And now we have 3 legitimate deep threats that we can spread across the field. So it should be interesting, especially with some of the other picks that we have. So, and as far as the grade, I mean, I feel like I have to give this an A, just solely based off of value.
Okay, I'm really excited about this pick. I remember when we watched his highlights that he was just a chippy dude. Like,
yeah, he plays mean.
If he had a chance to like hit somebody, he would. And I just love that kind of attitude from a wide receiver, because those are the types of things that unlocks like the long rushing touchdown is the wide receiver that likes to mix it up, you know? So I just like the attitude so much of how he plays, right? Like he's just an angry dude who's ready to take his shot if he gets a shot. And if you want to tackle him and you don't take a good angle and he can hit you, I think he will, right? That's what I like. I think it makes a ton of sense in terms of, you know, he can play right away, probably. I mean, it's going to be hard for
no, I think
any of
he's
the receivers
starting
on the roster to take the number 3 spot from him. It's going to be a battle. But between Yoshivas and Charlie Jones and Burton, whoever's like the third wide receiver is going to have to earn it, which I love. And I think that the likely scenario is that he's going to be T. Higgins' replacement. So overall, I like everything about the pick. So I had to give it an A, man. I'm super excited about it. I think he's of the guys that we've talked about thus far. I guess that's not fair. I think Chris Jenkins is going to start for sure.
Start?
Yeah, I think so.
No, he's not going to start.
Sure, I think he's going to start.
There's no way. Who's he going to start over?
Name somebody. Who's better?
The 2 defensive tackles. Now I can't think of their names. Well, the guy that we signed in the offseason.
Yes.
Definitely going to start.
And
then BJ Hill.
Okay.
Those 2 are going to be the starters for sure.
Well, I don't think he's going to. He's not going to. Okay. So.
No, but I think he's going to play a significant amount.
This changes it then. Of the guys we talked about, and I think he's the most likely to start day 1. And I think for the 3rd round, that's a good get. Or you could say that maybe they didn't do a good job in the 1st and the 2nd round. Either way, I like the pick. A. Moving on.
All right. McKinley Jackson. And this is a guy that we actually liked. I feel like we even rated him like a 4. Or didn't we both of us rate him as a 4th rounder when we watched the
I think we rated
highlights?
him as I think we rated him higher, like as a 1st or 2nd rounder.
I think we got it right. I think, well, it's weird because a lot of
not a 1st rounder, probably like a 2nd or 3rd rounder. He was rated way lower, but I think we had him as 2nd or 3rd. I think
we got it right. I feel like when we checked it, we were like, oh, it was 4th, because it was kind of the sentiment is that maybe the Bengals reached a little bit because a lot of the other draft analysis or analysts they had a more of like a 5th, 6th rounder.
Yeah.
Or maybe, sorry, a 4th or 5th rounder, probably closer to a 5th rounder. But
why is it not doing it?
But the reality of the situation, if you're looking at like true like nose tackle type players, there's only like 3 good ones, and once Sweat went off the board, then that kind of like it was basically him, and I think that's why we.
So you said sure tackler, moves well for side, good motor. You rated him as 3rd rounder.
Okay,
I said,
yeah.
Wide, strong, finishes plays. I have it ranked as a 2nd rounder.
Okay, yeah. You're right. So
and then to be fair, Chris Jenkins, you said versatile, not dominant, 4th round. I said bad deadlift form. I don't know, 5th round. So yeah, okay. So we're talking about the guys that we liked better than Chris Jenkins. We liked Dorless better. We liked Wingo. We were kind of, I think overall we liked them better. Sweat was picked in the second round. So Ruke was picked in the second round. Or these guys, I think Ruke and
He was the second tackle,
Sweat
defensive
were
tackle picked.
both picked ahead of him, so we can't say that. I do think we like Dwayne Carter better.
Yeah.
Fisk was picked much higher. We were good on that. Yeah. So there's like 3 guys that we had that were available that we liked better. We also like Leonard Taylor better, who was like rated much higher at the beginning of the draft cycle, but then like dropped off.
It's crazy.
Picked. So yeah, McKinley Jackson. I gotta give an A because I said I thought he was a second rounder, and they picked him at the end of the 3rd round. So I'm good with this pick. Your grade?
Yeah, no, I think it's a B because I know there's some people that think it was a bit of a reach, but if you're looking at what we want him to do, because we're looking for more of a true nose tackle type player, and that's exactly him. And then, just getting to know him a little bit more and see some of the videos and just hear him speak, I think it's a really good fit. I think he's more of like a character guy too, because I want to say he was a captain at Texas A&M, so it feels like that's one of the things that Bengals like to draft are captains and productive players. I know obviously we only saw the highlights, so we only got to see the best of the best, but I know he had like, I guess he's more of like a hit or miss type player, it seemed like, based off of what most people were saying. But in terms of what the Bengals are looking for in their situation, I think it's a really good fit. And they kind of had to take him when they did because there was no guarantee if they waited one more round that he was going to be there. But this is, I think this is the area.
Like the pick. I just, like.
I know you really wanted the running back at this point too, so I think that was kind of the.
Yeah, no, I think I was chanting the running back's name, but in my defense, I forgot about Zach Moss. And what we'll learn is never forget about Zach Moss.
So,
but no, I like the pick. I would have been happy if they picked McKinley Jackson before Chris Jenkins. So,
okay, so going into the 4th round, this is another pick where I guess some people thought maybe we reached a little bit, or where the Bengals reached, but for us, this is the guy that we picked the most. Eric Hall for like the majority.
We're gonna look through all of our mock drafts. But yeah, Eric Hall was, I think, on all of our drafts.
Almost all of them.
All.
Yeah, because for a while, and now I understand why, because the injuries that he's had. I think that's why they had him rated so low until it got closer to the draft, and where they could do more evaluations or whatever. But it seemed like for the first 4 or 5 mock drafts that we did, we consistently got Eric Hall in the 7th round every single time, and it was just like
he rocketed up the PFF board.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was rated so low that we were picking him in the 7th round, and he was like we were even picking him above other dudes.
Yeah, PFF for a while just had him really underrated because there was other draft sites where there's no way you're gonna get Eric Hall in the 7th round. Some of the other sites, like you had to get him in the 5th or 6th. Actually, I would say some of the other mock draft sites, 5th round seemed to be like the sweet spot for him. So we weren't too far off, but I mean, if you look at the makeup of the player, and so Eric Hall, and then the other tight end that we picked, which we'll get, and then plus the guy that we signed, Gesicki, I think that's how you say it.
Gesicki,
yeah. If you look at the makeup of those players, you can see I feel like the fundamental shift that they're trying to implement is that they're all tall, big receivers. I know Gesicki's more of kind of like because he's 6'6". I looked this up. I think he's 6'6". I think Eric Hall and the other tight end, Tanner McLaughlin, or wait, is it McLaughlin? Yeah. They're all, I think they're at least, I guess if you round up, they're kind of like 6'5". But I think the tight ends that we got are they're good at pass blocking and receiving.
Uh-huh.
So, or blocking in
I
general.
feel
So,
like our old offensive coordinator doesn't like tight ends, and like we got rid of his dumbass, and now we're drafting tight ends, and we're getting tight ends. It's sort of like as soon as he left, what happened? The Bengals went out and got 3 tight ends,
I mean, that could be, there's probably some truth to that in, because
and you're looking at a guy who loves tight ends. Is even the one in Austin? No, it's by you, tight ends. But I like when the new NCAA or video game comes out for football. I'm going to implement like a 3 or 4 or 5 tight end offense. I'm going to go like all tight ends and like short, super fast receivers.
but yeah,
I,
I think
I'm going to win a natty.
I think what they're trying to do with these tight ends too is that they're trying to get to the point where we just have the same tight end on the field for most of the time, because I think that was part of the problem with the offense the last couple of years. Is just the personnel that was on the field pretty much gave away whether we're going to pass or run. Because
Yes.
like you see Sample, we're most likely going to run.
Samples out there, we're running it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you saw the Hudson out there, we're most likely going to pass it. I know there was a few plays where they, did the opposite, but generally, but I think with these tight ends that are coming in, they could do more of both ends. So it's going to be more of a guessing game on the defense.
Yeah.
So I like
that
it.
means like Hudson's out though, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the speculation is that maybe Eric All starts the year on the PUP or IR and comes back later in the year. So we might have basically he'll start on IR and then we'll have the 4 other tight ends, which kind of makes sense to me. And it also makes sense why they went with another tight end later in the draft. So, but as far as grades, don't get me wrong. Like, I like the prospects of Eric All, but I think if he is going to start the year on IR, I don't know. It kind of takes it away. I do think he has a lot of potential, but I would give this a C, a really high C, C plus.
I have to give it a B because Eric Hall is our guy.
Yeah, no, he's definitely our guy.
So, but also this one killed me because Wright was still available. And I was like, I watched it happen. I'm like, why didn't we pick Wright? I feel like Wright's going to have more touchdowns next year than Eric Hall has receptions. And for that reason, I'm bummed. But I still have to give it a B because he's our guy. Moving on. Josh Newton.
I think Eric Hall will have plenty of receptions. I think if he's actually healthy and can play to his ability, he's going to be a playmaker. Like, if you just watch his film when he's healthy,
yeah, but
he looks really good.
I mean, and he's healthy now. And he's like a perfect fit for what the Bengals do.
But you said he's going to have more touchdowns than what All will have in receptions. That's a tall order.
If he misses, how many games is he going to miss?
I mean, it could be basically half of a year. So I mean,
okay, he's going to play 8 games, and he's going to immediately be the starter, or is he going to?
Well, in 8 games, I think he can reasonably get like 30 or 40 receptions
over Gesicki and McLaughlin and Hudson and Sample.
Yeah, because I think
having not played all year.
Yeah, because I think he's just that type of guy.
Okay, well, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. All right, so 5th round.
Josh Newton.
How does TCU?
Don't know anything about him. Literally
this seems
nothing.
like another value pick. I think it was one of those situations where I think he's rated a little bit higher.
Calls it average. They rated him as 189 overall, and the Bengals picked him 149.
Oh, okay. I've seen it the other way. It seemed like we got.
I don't know anything about the guy.
Because I feel like I want to say maybe consensus boards, you could flip the 2 picks and it would still make sense. So if you took Newton in the 4th and All in the 5th, like it would still work out. But I think his strength is zone coverage, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Like to
that's what
me,
the
he's a
Bengals like to
solid depth
do.
piece. Oh yeah, for sure. So and I want to say he plays really physical too. So I like that. I don't know too much about him, but that's just based off of what they said during the draft and you know other analysts. But um, when it comes to like defenses, it's like you could never have too many good defensive backs, or you can never have too many pass rushers. So,
Hmm.
but I guess this is another round where I thought maybe they would go for like a guard or possibly a center for the future.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I guess I would give this pick. I feel like it's a C plus, and to me that's still pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know. I still have
I
that feeling.
agree. I mean, it's C plus. I mean, it's a 5th-round pick. If someone says they rated him 189, you pick him 149. I just feel like it's like once you get out of the first 3 rounds, like the variance is so high, right?
Yeah.
So if you have someone rated 150 and somebody picked them 180, is that a great deal? I don't know. What's the difference? Like the difference between the 150th best and 180th best is like minute, right? You know, the difference between like the number 1 pick and the 30th pick is huge, but the difference between 150 and 180 is like minute, right?
Wait, who
It's like
graded this on PFF? Because like I
it's
feel like
like
the guy that I
I
heard
was
from
just gonna say it's
PFF.
like ranking which McDonald's cheeseburger tasted better, the one you ate on Monday or the one you ate on Tuesday. Surely there's a difference, but how different is it, right?
Well, I think it all just depends on where your need is for that particular part of the draft. So like once you have a few other positions taken care of and you're looking at your roster and
Mm-hmm.
what hole you want to fill, and
Right.
like to me it makes sense.
You
At the
look
very
at
least, it
guys.
makes sense.
You look at guys that fit what you do, and you like something about them, right? And there might be someone who, even objectively speaking, is more versatile, is slightly bigger, is slightly faster, is slightly stronger, but he doesn't fit into what you do as well as the guy that's like slightly less big or slightly weaker or slightly slower. But the guy that you pick, you've seen him do the things you like to do, so you pick him. So that's why it's like, yeah, C plus. How do you knock someone for a 5th-round pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about too much. Let's move on. 6th round.
All right, Tanner McLaughlin. So kind of a shock, even though we in several of our mock drafts we did double dip on tight end quite often.
Yes.
And I don't know, I don't think Tanner was really on our radar, but then just watching his highlights and seeing him, I like him as a prospect a lot. It's actually like watching him, I'm just trying to figure out why he lasted this long, because he seems like he could be somewhat of a playmaker. He kind of reminds me of one of those tight ends from the Steelers back in the day. I want to say Jesse James, but I don't think that's the right one. It's the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
I forget him, but he just seems like tall, lanky, like long arms.
Yeah.
But he can move really well receiving. So he, like, to me, he might be more of a, I guess, on the side of Gazeki, where maybe he might be more of a receiving tight end. But I feel like he is still pretty well rounded. But I like the pick, especially if Eric Hall is going to start on the year on IR.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tanner makes a lot of sense, especially going forward after this year. If everything pans out, then we're set for tight end for a good period, about, at least for 3 more years, right? So, which we had basically a rotating door at tight end for a while. So I think they just kind of want to establish something and have consistency going forward. So I like it. Oh, and
Okay.
I guess,
Did you give it a grade yet?
No, but I would give it an A because like when I watch him play and see what he does, I'm just surprised he lasted until the sixth. So I
Okay.
feel like he should have gone earlier actually.
Okay. All right. I give it a C plus. I don't know anything about the guy. Seems like they picked him in the right place in the draft, ish, right? I mean, it's a 6th round pick, so it's like, who cares? In terms of like, oh, I saw him as a 7th rounder, you picked him as a 6th rounder, whatever. The reason why it's a plus is because they're actually addressing the tight end position, which they drafted Drew Sample and they were like done for like 5 years. And it's just like, a shift towards like actually treating it like a position where they're going to like draft people and try to develop some talent. So I like it. And good riddance to the offensive coordinator who didn't call plays and doesn't like tight ends, because tight ends are awesome. And to win at football, you need tight ends. Also fullbacks. So
Sample.
Sample's the fullback. Hey.
Well, there was a lot of it's funny because like I feel like at least I was saying this last year is like they should play Sample more out of the backfield and let him be a lead blocker. But then after we drafted 2 tight ends, they're like, well, maybe they'll move Sample to the backfield. Like I've been saying that because like he's such a really good blocker and he kind of reminds me of Ryan Hewitt back in the day. I'm not sure if you remember him, but he was kind of like,
look, come on. After all the tight end talk, you don't think I remember Ryan Hewitt?
well, he was kind of like,
like the
tight end /
blonde
fullback
hair coming through the backfield and just swallowing dudes.
Yeah, no, he was a really good blocker. So it makes sense to me. Like if you get him going for the full,
then it makes sense. Then you need another tight end because Sample's a fullback now or an H back, right?
Yeah,
I think technically it's an H back, which gives you multiplicity, right? Because then I don't know. Maybe not. Either way, I like it.
All right.
As many 6'5" and over dudes you can have blocking guys and hitting dudes, the better.
So we haven't really mentioned it much, but I know we're getting into the last 6th round pick. I think this is the point where I feel pretty comfortable with the first 7 players that we talked about making the roster.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I feel like the next couple of picks where it's kind of borderline. But apparently Cedric Johnson's got a lot of upside, and it felt like a lot of people thought he was somewhat of a like another value pick. I don't want to say steal, but definitely a value pick.
Yeah, I mean it's a 6th round pick. I don't know anything about Cedric Johnson other than he played for Ole Miss. Looks like his overall grades on PFF are mediocre. He's a pass rusher. And that's all I know. Wait, if I click on this, it'll tell me how tall he is. 6'3", 265.
Height-wise, he seems kind of short for what the Bengals typically like. Because it felt like for a while there, we were
6'3", 265. I mean, that's defensive end. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, it feels like, I mean, it's not too far off, but I feel like for a while there, we either had defensive ends that were 6'4", 6'5", sometimes 6'6". Because I'm going to say Trey Hendrickson, 6'5".
That was like the Marvin Lewis era.
Yeah,
like,
and then
if you wanted to play defensive end for the Bengals, you needed to be like at least 6'5". But
right,
which I liked. I like, but Ben Roethlisberger's retired, so I think like it was sort of like the theory of the Bengals used to have defensive ends that could get to Roethlisberger, but he was so big that they couldn't bring him down. So the Bengals are like, well, what if we draft defensive ends that are as big as him? Maybe they could tackle him. And
he
it
was
worked.
So annoying in a good way, especially if you're a Steelers fan. But
Yeah.
it just felt like there's so many times where like we should have tackled or sacked
Roethlisberger.
Yeah,
Roethlisberger. He was
Roethlisberger.
so big.
Yeah, he just
so
shake him off.
But then we started. Then we got the Michael Johnson, and we got the what's his face from Florida.
Dunlap.
No,
Yeah, Dunlap.
Dunlap. But yeah, no, I think he's borderline. But from what I understand, what you said is like he's a pretty good pass rusher, so you can never have too many uh really good pass rushers. So who knows? Maybe he'll stick.
Never
But
know.
as far as a grade, I would give this a B.
I'm gonna see. I don't know. I'm. Who knows if he even makes the team?
Well, I
But
mean, kind of like what you said, it's sixth, seventh rounder or whatever. But
mm-hmm.
it's one of those picks where, like, if it hits, then it's like it feels really good. But
Mm-hmm.
even though
Yeah, I
I
mean
don't think,
our best defensive end I think was like a 6th round pick or a 5th round pick. So
yeah, I mean, a lot can happen. And there's plenty of room for development or whatever. But um, it's just a defensive end. You can never have too many of them. So yeah, I think it's a solid pick, even though I think he's still borderline. But I think part of it is just because we have a lot of established defensive ends already, and it's just like
Mhm.
I think one of them would probably have to get hurt for him to make the roster. But it's a possibility. You never know.
yeah,
And then the first pick in the 7th round is it Dejon Anthony out of Ole
Yep.
Miss.
Don't know anything about him,
Yeah, I don't know too much about him either.
dude. He's old, 24.
Yeah, but I mean that makes more sense later into the. I mean, I feel like I would say at least the first round you kind of want to go for the younger guys. I think after that you can have a little bit more, I guess, leeway. But I feel like the first round, like you want those players that haven't necessarily peaked,
Yeah,
have plenty of room to develop. And then I think that's why
yeah. I
Mims is
just
so
don't.
perfect because he's
I
still like
just don't like
21.
this pick. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to remember because, like, I know there was guards on the board for a while, all the way up. Well,
But
I think
I'm
at this
just
point
saying,
he's
like
probably gone.
safety, it's just like there is.
Well, they
there
labeled
is
him
no
as a
room on
DB, so I don't
safety.
think he's. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be playing safety necessarily. I think again he's a fringe player. I don't necessarily think he's going to
I
make the
don't think he's
roster.
going to make the roster. So
No, no.
I would see. Moving on,
Yeah, I'd say C too.
Matt Lee.
Matt Lee, this outside of Burton, and I think technically if you go by consensus drafting boards, Matt Lee was probably the actual biggest steal for the Bengals in the draft.
Yeah.
Oh, he's actually 6'4". Well, I heard they said he was undersized.
6'4". How's that undersized for a center?
Well, he's 295. I don't know. They said he was a smaller tight end, or not tight end, center. But outside of size, I mean, a lot of people had him much higher grade. Like he was more of a mid-round grade, but somehow he lasted all the way until our last pick.
Mm-hmm.
Although I feel like PFS grades seem way more harsher than.
Yeah, they had him ranked 310.
Yeah, that's weird.
They was the lowest ranked center that they rated.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
seen so many people say like, "Oh, I'm surprised Matt Lee lasted that long," but he seems like he's a baller, and he does a really good job. He kind of reminds me of Jonah Williams coming out. Like he's not necessarily gonna push people back,
Yeah.
but he's not. But he's really good at staying in front of people. Like,
Yeah.
and I think he could potentially be a starter next year. But I also think center could be a higher pick next year too. But
Yeah, I mean,
either way, he's a great depth piece.
what's your grade? Who cares?
Hey,
We don't know shit about this guy. What's your grade?
hey,
A. Whoa. Okay, I was gonna give a C because he's a 7th-round dude. Can't be that good. But I like the thought. If you're gonna take shots on guys, you should be drafting in positions you need help in. So not drafting a safety, I would have thought that you would draft 2 interior linemen, defensive end, anything, right? Anything but a safety. Previously, center makes a ton of sense. Maybe you get lucky and you get a dude who can play. So I think it makes a ton of sense, but in the end, at the end of the day, it is a 7th-round pick. So who knows?
no, I've only heard really good things about Matt Lee.
But I think that he has a much better shot than Anthony of making the team because it's a position of need, right? Where safety is not a position of need.
Well, I think he
So
comes in and he's going to be the backup center. So I mean, he's got more potential to actually start than some of these other depth pieces. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That to me, like, I don't know why you're picking depth pieces at positions that you don't need depth pieces at.
I feel
right?
like, well,
Safety is like the most overloaded position the Bengals have. They're moving a first round pick from safety to another position because they have too many safeties.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about center.
No, center. This is a good pick. I'm contrasting it to the previous pick.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know why you're picking a safety. I would have picked two centers or a guard and a center or another defensive end and a center, right? It's like positions that you need depth and the guy has a chance of making the team. Whereas like a safety, I just feel like he's not going to make the team. So why make the pick?
Yeah, no, I mean, it could be another DJ Ivy situation, even though I hope he comes back. I mean, that could be the reason why we took another DB too. Maybe DJ Ivy starts the year on IR as well, because I think he got hurt towards the end of last season. So maybe that's why they went with another DB.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Newton's going to replace some of the people that we lost. So I don't know. It's I don't know too much about Anthony or some of the later round picks, but for me, most of these picks, if not all of them, make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, there's players I would have picked ahead of some of the guys they've picked, but I also know that an NFL front office is going to put way more time and effort and have more resources to know which player is
resources, but you don't know that they put more time and effort into it.
I would hope so. I would feel really bad if we put more time in the Bengals.
You don't know so.
Well, the things that we don't get to see are the interviews and all their investigative work as far as like how their character is. That's the big piece that we miss, and I think that's
I think you're giving them too much credit.
Who?
Whoever you're talking about.
The Bengals front office?
Yes.
I mean, I'm just speaking in generalities. I think any front office, any NFL team has this insight that us fans don't, just because we don't have an opportunity to meet all the different players, and because it makes a difference. Like what you see on highlights or film, whatever.
Here's my theory. I think they're just like us, man. I think
right, but they have more resources to do more research.
No. I think they're even worse than us. How about that? I think that the rounds 1 through 3 mean so much that's where all the investment and time and energy is, right?
No.
And then by the time you get to the 7th round, I think it's a crapshoot for most front offices.
I think
some front offices excel at the late rounds.
I think it's more.
I think most teams invest all their time and effort into like the first 100 picks or the first 150 picks. Once you get to like over 200, they know probably less than the average college football fan about these dudes.
I doubt it.
I think so. I there's no way to prove it, but that's my opinion.
Well, they hire people to specifically scout college players full time. So I mean, there's a process. I'm sure. Obviously, the players that are getting ready to go in the draft have priority, but I'm sure they're looking at players even before they're going to go into the draft. Like I'm sure they have different levels.
Here's my position. I would bet you any sum of money that you want to bet, but we know it's not going to be a lot because we don't like to bet, but that you could go to a Mississippi State game, or I'm sorry, Ole Miss, and find a white-haired dude who's probably been a season ticket holder for like 20 years, and he would know infinitely more about Cedric Johnson and Dejon Anthony than whoever the Bengals scout was that said, pick this guy in the 7th round. That's my position on it. By the time you get to like the late rounds of the draft, these dudes know less than like a season ticket holder for whatever team that guy came from.
But that's different. Like
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm trying to say. Maybe I said it wrong before, but that's my opinion. Is that like?
But the scenario that you presented, then it's the same thing about the first round pick. Because if they're watching that player 24/7,
no. I think a first round pick, they are like they know like the Bengals probably know everything there is to know about Marius Mims. They probably talk to everybody. They probably talk to his like high school coach, like his position coach, all of his teammates.
Right.
They probably
higher
watch
the
video
pick
of him like eating, a taco or something.
Right.
But like by the time they get to Matt Lee, they don't know anything about the guy.
No, listen. Your point was that the average college fan will know more about a particular player than an NFL scout, which
yes.
I disagree in the sense because that specific fan for a specific team will know that one player.
That's what I mean. That's what.
But that's not the way it works. Like you got to know more than.
Ole Miss fan knows more about Dejon Anthony than the Bengal scouts know about Dejon Anthony.
But that same fan is probably going to know more about
a Georgia fan does not know more about Amarius Mims than the Bengals know about Amarius Mims.
If you're talking about a hard,
they invest all. I'm trying to say is that they invest all their time and effort into the top picks because that's what you should do, right? The 7th round is such a crapshoot.
But you make it seem like they don't have time to do it for all of them. I mean, obviously you're going to spend a little bit more resources on maybe for sure the first round and probably the second round. But once you get to the third round, I mean,
I feel like the top 100, top 150 dudes are probably really well vetted. But like once you get past
400 dudes are really well vetted. Like they have a pretty good
idea. No, that's what I'm saying is no, I don't think so.
I think so. I think it's just the way it works.
No, I don't think that's how it works.
Yeah, it is because the way it works is that there's a central scouting. There's like two major.
Yeah, I know they got like guys whose job title it is to do it, but like
no. Listen to what I'm saying.
That's in charge of that is like not like a real guy.
Listen, Eric.
He's a guy who's going to be working at Taco Bell in 3 years.
No. There's two major organizations that scout, and all 32 teams use one of the two just to get a basis of a ranking. And then each team has their own personal scouts that they go out.
Okay,
and specifically.
For example, here is PFF's analysis of Matt Lee. Now here's a guy, right?
Okay.
Now, next time Central Florida comes up to Cincinnati and their fans sit in my section, because I sit in the worst section for Cincinnati games, I bet you the first dude I see wearing a UCF jersey, I could ask him about Matt Lee, and he'd be able to tell me some stuff about him.
Yeah, but that's PFF, though.
Okay, but my point is that all the resources are towards the top picks, and once you get towards the 7th round, it's a crapshoot, and probably a fan of that team knows more about the players that are like 7th round prospects than the like NFL front offices. That's my position. It's controversial, but that is my position. I think we need to move on.
Well, I don't think you're giving the scouts enough. I mean, that's their full time.
I know.
What are they doing majority of the year?
You don't think I'm giving them enough credit, and I think you're giving them too much credit.
I think I'm giving them an adequate amount of credit because I mean they're a professional team for a reason.
I know you think you're giving them adequate amount of credit, but we're disagreeing here, so that's the crux of the disagreement.
Right, and that's why I'm going to continue to say what I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing that we're disagreeing. I'm agreeing that we're disagreeing, but I'm just saying like
let's agree to disagree and move on.
Okay, that's fine. I feel like it's just I mean it's 2024. They have so much technology to keep up with this stuff, so it's a lot easier than back in the day where you had to physically go everywhere. Where you don't.
I think it was better back in the day because they physically had people that went everywhere and did stuff. Now they got like some hipster with like skinny jeans looking at like AI data on like guys, and that's not how football works.
I don't know.
That's not
Not
how sports work. Sports are not data only, right? Because like
you're
there
talking
is an
about those
aspect
advanced
of it.
analytics, but I don't.
No,
That's,
no, no.
that's two different things.
Analytics isn't everything because there's an aspect of it where like literally people change. And
No, there's definitely a human element to it.
yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm saying though. There's like the human element of some dudes, what they were in 2023 is not what they are in 2024 for various reasons, right? And it's just not going to show up in analytics. You need to have someone to go over there and look and see what the dude is and figure out why it's different, right? So,
and I'm sure they still do that, but
yeah.
they also have the technology on top of everything.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying though. I'm telling you, like, I mean, that's the difference of opinions. Let's move on.
Okay. So we're gonna go through all of our mock drafts
All of them.
that we've compiled.
We did 12.
See,
12
Eric Hall.
mock drafts. Think of how smart we got doing mock drafts.
I mean, it made the first, I would say, 4 rounds pretty like, I guess more. I felt more involved than I ever have in the past by doing what we did. I would say even going forward, if it's possible for certain positions, instead of doing like the top 10 or whatever we're doing, we should try and maybe do like the top 20, or maybe. No, I think we could do the top 20. I think if we did that, then I feel like we could probably. That's pretty much the whole draft. Like, I think we'll have a pretty good
pretty much
top 20 of each position.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pretty much have a pretty good understanding of who's who and who would we want, especially late in the rounds. But I felt pretty comfortable for the first half, or maybe 3 rounds. But trying to look through the.
Okay, so what
rounds.
jumps out at you looking at this our first 3 mock drafts?
Well, we pretty much got the first couple of rounds correct. It seems like the majority of the ones that we have, we went tackle pretty much first round exclusively. I know when we did certain other positions, we tried to switch it up a little bit just to see how it would land. Mm-hmm. But we also picked defensive tackle or defensive line fairly early too. So I feel like we had a pretty good understanding.
Positionally, we did pretty good.
Yeah, because I see a lot of
the other thing I would say is
even receivers.
You know, even though our methods are kind of bootleg and kind of whatever, I don't know, man. Xavier Worthy, right? We picked him 49. We got B minus. First round pick, right? Look at our first round pick at tackle. All 3 of those dudes are first round picks. Braden Fisk, we picked him in the 3rd round. He was a 2nd rounder. Braden Fisk, 3rd round. He was a 2nd rounder, right? Trey Benson, they gave us a C+. Trey Benson was picked by round 3, right?
Yeah, he was early round 3.
Ben Sinnott, we picked him 5th round. Every single time we got B, C+, C, 2nd rounder, right? Yep. Eric All, we picked him in the 7th round. Bengals picked him in the 4th round. I feel like we did pretty good, man.
Yeah, I think we had a pretty good, I guess, pulse of what we thought the Bengals were going to do.
But no, not just what the Bengals were going to do, what the league did, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next. If I can figure out how to get to the next.
So yeah, as we go forward, we should be getting closer to the draft. So.
All right. So again, this one's harder to see. Oh, this was one where we traded down a bunch and stuff.
Look, we got Eric All in the 4th. Is that the 4th round?
Yeah. Wow. We got an F. We got an F for picking Eric All in the 4th round. Look at that.
That's like very accurate.
That's funny. And then, okay, so we picked Newton in the 1st round, 1 pick. Sweat in the 2nd round, got B minus. He was a 2nd rounder. Trey Benson, 3rd round, all the way. Dominic Puny, 3rd round, B plus. Bruh, that guy was a 2nd rounder, right? Again, Ben Sinnott, round 4, 2nd rounder. Zach Zinter, round 5, 3rd rounder.
Yeah, I think we both had a feeling that Zinter would go a little bit earlier. Same thing with
Yeah.
Senate. I think we just did it because we knew we would get value out of it because it's a mock. But I feel like we were always high on Senate, Zinter.
Worthy.
So like Bordolini was the guy that I wanted to get later in the draft. I think he was
Yeah.
still available fifth. I think he was probably picked in the sixth or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was picked late fifth, but there's several times where like, man, we should try to go for him.
Yeah, I like this draft because we literally this one where we did all the trades. We picked all of the Michigan offensive line. Nice. Come on, next slide. All right. Oh, so this is the last one. So we had a couple drafts where we got Brock Bowers at 18. That was smart.
He almost made it to the Bengals. It was pretty close.
Yeah, and then Mims B plus.
Hey, look,
Legit
got the
was a first round.
we got the McKinley Jackson pick right.
Yeah, look at us. We got D for that. Again, Zach Zinter in the 5th round, C minus. No, PFF. That's a third.
So we got Eric All in the 4th, right? We got Jackson in the 3rd, right? We got Amarius Mims in the 1st, right? Look, and we even got the punter that we got in free agency. So look at that.
What?
Yeah, that McNamara.
Yeah. Bengals
We got-
signed him as a free
yeah.
agent.
Yeah.
Nice. Torrey Taylor. Okay. Torrey Taylor, round 7, C.
Went 4.
Wasn't he like a 5th rounder?
No, he's a 4th rounder.
4th rounder.
He was the last pick
Dude.
of the Bears, I think, because they were
Dude.
pretty much out of picks, so like they had to kind of pick him early. It was, but apparently they thought they needed him. So
Yeah. So, yeah, this is what I was talking about. We liked Michael Hall.
mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it's weird how it works. Torrey Taylor, 6th round was an A minus, but then the week or two earlier when we picked him in the 7th round, it was a C.
Looking back, I take it back. Eric All wasn't the one that we picked the most. It was Fisk, but
Yeah.
we did pick Eric All a lot though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Braden Fisk didn't make it to the Bengals. I don't know. We picked Ben Sinnott a lot. We liked him a lot.
Yeah,
And
but that was a
he
value
went-
pick.
He was a 2nd rounder.
Yeah, I thought for sure he would be gone by the 3rd, and I kind of felt like he would be gone. Like, if you just go off the draft history, if you believe in, I guess, the measurements and stuff like that, and the production, like it's like there's no way we're gonna get him in the 3rd, past the 3rd, especially where we're picking.
Yeah.
And I was thinking it wouldn't shock me if he's in the 2nd because like he's not as fast as Laporta, but he's like all around built kind of like him, like where he can be dynamic with the ball, but at the same time like he's a really good blocker. So like if you can get a tight end that you can keep in the game most of the time, it just makes it that much harder for the defense to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah. So was Zinter a 2nd or a 3rd rounder?
He was a 3rd rounder.
3rd rounder. So we got
Yep.
C minus for picking him in the 5th.
We always picked him, I felt like around that range because if we waited any longer, he was gone. So we knew we pretty much could get him consistently in the 5th. But
Yeah.
again, it was another guy where it's just like,
We
if you
picked
look
him
at his film,
every draft we picked him in the 5th.
yeah, that was like the
Fifth.
sweet spot. And then if you waited, you couldn't get him.
Yeah. 5th. Oh, you go. Sam Russell, 2nd rounder. He was a 1st rounder.
No, I think he was picked in the 2nd.
Was he?
I think
I think
so.
it was a C minus. He was picked before that. Dorless in the 3rd. I think he was available when the Bengals picked in the 3rd, and they passed on him. Then Johnny Wilson in the 3rd. He gave us a C. That's probably fair.
Well, was he picked in the 4th or 5th?
Who?
Wilson.
Yeah, later than the 3rd. I mean,
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure he was still there.
But every time we mocked, I don't think Burton was available in the
No,
3rd.
no, that like it was weird to me because it felt like he slid closer to the draft because of the, I guess, character concerns. But I just, I didn't think he would be anywhere close to the third. So it was just more or less, what position did you want to fill in that round and with what player? And it just, the way it worked out was like we always went higher with the offensive line and defensive tackle, to where if we were picking in the second or third round, like, yeah, I don't know. It didn't seem like he was going to be there where we would normally pick. And plus, we were really high on Worthy in the second.
But like the ultimate takeaway is, you know what? It's not that hard. Not that hard. We could, me and you. That's all. That's all the Bengals need for a front office. Me and you.
And PFF.
Well, I mean, yeah, we would pay the $60 a year for PFF.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, if that can get us a job on the Bengals, then I would gladly pay the $60.
Yeah, we pay them the $60. Maybe we could even, like, you know, splurge and get like a more, you know, detailed membership.
Was Frank Gore even picked? I think he became a free agent. I thought.
I don't know. I mean, like,
I think Luke McCaffrey was picked in the 5th, or no? Was he picked earlier?
I think
he might have been picked earlier. Yeah, he might have actually been a 4th round pick.
I know he's at the football team. All right. Well, I think we've exhausted this subject.
Yeah.
Can't wait till next year.
Or, I mean, like I said, maybe we can do a little bit more analysis with the actual draft and start building out the data. Because I feel like if we start on that now, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Because I like doing that spreadsheet. I wouldn't mind making it a little bit more detailed so that we can look into more things and maybe find a pattern.
Mm-hmm. We'll figure it out.
Yep. Alrighty. Peace.